y'all, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Saher. I'm a student of traditional Chinese medicine in New York City, and today's content is going to be about misconceptions that are spread about traditional Chinese medicine that I wanted to debunk. So before I jump into today's content, I wanted to talk a little bit about my hiatus from YouTube and kind of what was going on during that period. So if you're new here and if you're old here, you may notice that my last post was maybe like 5 or 6 months ago, and it's actually because I was finishing up my first year of the program. It's a 4-year-long program, and towards the end of it, it just felt like a lot was going on. You know, we have the pandemic that's going on, the holidays were around the corner, I had major final exams, and so everything just kind of came sitting on my shoulders. And then I had the YouTube that I wanted to keep up, but I just felt like in order to give my best, I wouldn't have been able to do so. That's kind of what was going on during the break, but I think that break also kind of gave me a little bit more insight into the direction that I want the channel to go and how I kind of want to move forward with my studies and kind of balancing both school, YouTube, and just all the other facets of life that come into play. So without further ado, let's get into more of today's content. I wanted to share a little bit about the inspiration behind this video, which is basically last term, a few months ago, one of my colleagues asked me to tell her about acupuncture because she didn't really know much about it. And I think that, you know, if you're not raised in a community that practices acupuncture, or it's just something that you're not directly exposed to, it's kind of hard to know what's going on. So in the process of trying to explain it to her, I didn't feel as confident, I didn't feel as strong in kind of breaking it down. Yes, I knew it was like I knew that it works and I knew how it works, but there was some sort of disconnect in trying to convey that information to her. So I think after a year of study, I finally feel a little bit stronger about sharing that information, and I thought the best way to do that would be one, through this video to kind of bring more awareness and spread better knowledge about the subject matter. Okay, so the first misconception about Chinese medicine is that TCM, or Chinese herbal medicine, is plant-based only. And that is actually quite a misnomer. So when we refer to Chinese herbs, we're actually referring to a variety of different types of medicinals. We're going to use animal parts, we're going to use plant-based matter, and we're also going to use minerals. So I think because there's a lot of misinformation about the herbs, I wanted to show you a few of the herbs so that you can kind of see the different types that we have going around. So my school actually uses basically like these little herb kits to teach us about the herbs so that we can get familiar with the names, the functions, the indications, and kind of recognizing the herbs, but also just to give us more of a comprehensive understanding of the medicine that we're actually using to treat the patients with. So the first herb that I have here to show you, or non-herb, is shigao. You can see right here, it's actually a mineral. Excuse my poorly done manicure here, but I tried. So this herb is actually going to be a very cooling herb. It's used to basically drain internal fire or heat from the body. And the way that you would use this is either decocting it for a really long time. Because it's a mineral, you have to kind of let the mineral absorb into the water for quite a while for the components to actually be withdrawn from the mineral itself. Or you can use it as a topical calcified form for eczema, sores, burns, basically kind of physical manifestations of heat. So that's just one herb that I wanted to distinguish for you. And then just to give you kind of like one from each category, I also have an animal-based herb and a plant-based herb. So the animal-based herb that I have here is called LUNAR. And these, oh, there it goes, it focused. So these are basically little deer antlers. And this herb is basically used to tonify young. Now, of course, when you're given this herb, it's not going to be just given like in an antler form. It may, if you're going to be decocting it in kind of like an herbal formula, but typically most of the time it's going to be given in like a pill form or a granule, something that may dissolve into water, never just kind of like a straight up deer antler that says like, here, use this, you'll feel better. That's not how it works at all. And then the last herb that I wanted to show you is going to be Shu Di Huang and Sheng Di Huang. So both of these herbs right here are different types of Chinese foxglove root. So the reason I chose two is because one is going to be the prepared form, which is Shudi Huang, and the unprepared, or kind of like the more raw, natural form, is going to be Shangdi Huang. The purpose behind showing you both of them is to kind of show that herbs can be utilized in different ways based on the way that they are formulated and prepared. And I do also want to point out that these herbs are never given just kind of like as is. They're always given in a formula, which has to be prescribed from a Chinese medicine practitioner. So now that you have like a small blip of Chinese herbal medicine, this brings me to misconception number 2. The second misconception that I wanted to bring attention to is that TCM and its herbs are not regulated. And that is actually far from the truth. So in the United States, in order to practice traditional Chinese medicine, we do have to obtain board certified licensing. So as you know, the roots of Chinese medicine go far back in time, but I do want to bring to attention that when the opioid epidemic kind of came to attention in the United States, it was actually acupuncture and Chinese herbs that actually helped a lot of addiction recovery. With that, a lot of lobbying, a lot of working towards progress. The US government kind of saw that there was a benefit to herbs and acupuncture, and so now with all of that kind of leading up to it, the US Department of Education now recognizes the ACAHM, which basically stands for the Accreditation Commission of Acupuncture and Herbal Medicine. And they are basically the force that audits and creates our board licensing programs and accredits the schools that we're being taught in to make sure that we are able to practice in a safe way towards health and healing here in the US. I wanted to point out that my school actually has 3 campuses. There's the one here in New York that I attend, there's one in San Diego, and then there's also a branch in Chicago. So my branch is only going to grant me a master's after 4 years of comprehensive study, but the schools in San Diego and in Chicago actually grant doctoral degrees for the same exact program and the work that I'm doing. The main difference here is that there's just a few little legal loopholes that New York has in place, and so it's harder for us to obtain the doctorate right after school. Instead, we have to do a few more like clinical hours and a few other class hours to officially gain that doctoral degree. But in the state of California, fun fact, Chinese medicine practitioners who have obtained their doctoral degree, with the board licensing, they are granted the title of primary care practitioner, which means that they can basically prescribe a few prescription medications at the pharmacy and also order lab work, blood work, that sort of thing. So that's actually really cool, and I think that's like a huge step in kind of supporting and recognizing integrative and conjoined medicine here in the States. Okay, and then basically to kind of break down the accreditation and the kind of regulation of the herbs, Camwo here in New York is the largest Chinese herbal dispensary or pharmacy that exists in New York. And basically the FDA has certified them as an operational facility for prescription use of Chinese medical herbs. What that means is that they are a facility that can get audited, they can get checked, they can get traced, all of that by the FDA, and they regularly do comply with those audits and checks. And they basically are certified to give the herbs that we are prescribing. Now, in order to go to Camwo, you can't just go in without being a student or a practitioner of Chinese medicine in order to get most of the prescription herbs. That's why it's so important for us to obtain the 4 years of study and really make sure that we understand herb-drug interaction, that sort of thing, before we can start prescribing these herbs, because you may have read online that, some herbs are kind of dangerous in some forms, that sort of thing, and that definitely can be true. It's just that you have to make sure that you're using them in the proper dosage and the right way in order to gain the best benefit from them. Okay, and basically that is why it's always important to always go to a board certified herbalist in order to get your herbs, because they're going to be making sure that they're getting the herbs from a facility that is FDA regulated and does have the backup to support the herbs and the quality and the efficacy of the prescriptions that are being given to you. All right, so time for the third misconception about Chinese medicine, which is that Chinese medicine offers a magic pill to resolve everything. And that is definitely not true. Part of the reason why getting an MSTOM or a DAOM, which is basically a master's or doctorate of Chinese medicine, is because there is so much breadth of knowledge to absorb. Not only are we expected in these 4 years to learn all of the Taoist principles, the history, the theories, the philosophies of Chinese medicine, and acknowledging the way in which it came to be, but also we have to learn the biomedical reasons of how it works, and also just make sure that we have a good, solid, foundational understanding of anatomy and physiology, orthoneuro, pharmacology, herb-drug interactions, all of that. So keeping in mind all of that information is basically how we're able to come up with a treatment plan for our patients. So we combine all of our biomedical knowledge and our Chinese medicine knowledge in order to advise a treatment plan that works best for you as an individual. So in Chinese medicine, everyone is treated as though they have their own constitution. So what that means is that, two patients could come to you with the same complaint. Let's use asthma, for example. That's something that I personally struggle with. And when we treat asthma, we're not going to treat it like the Western way, where you kind of give like one medication and that's that for anyone that has that same issue. It's always going to be that we're going to take into account their entire medical holistic history in order to formulate a treatment plan. In that treatment plan, points could vary, like the acupuncture points that they choose, or the herbs that could vary. They could be modified based on how you're responding to them. All of that is going to come into play when treating you for your one chief complaint of asthma. Typically, when you see a Chinese medical doctor, it's also always going to take at least 5 to 6 treatments, maybe more, maybe less, just depending on the severity and the layers of what you have going on within your individual constitution. And super quickly, just kind of going back to the concept of like a magic pill, I wanted to use Ren Shen, which is ginseng, as an example of that magic pill quality. In the West, we kind of have emphasized the use of ginseng being kind of like this life elongating herb that just has all of these magical powers, and in reality, it may not be the best herb for you to take. Your constitution is going to vary from another person's, so while in one person it may be really helpful for them to actively take that herb, it could also just really drain your body if you don't have the right constitution to take the herb. So that's why it's also super important to always have somebody with the breadth of knowledge advise you in how to use these herbs, rather than just kind of going online, picking one up, and thinking that this herb is going to help you live longer. Okay, the fourth misconception that I have chosen to debunk for you today is that traditional Chinese medicine is ancient and outdated. And that's actually so far from the truth as well. So yes, there are a lot of components and theories that we rely on from Taoist and ancient theory from thousands of years ago, but it was actually standardized in the 1950s by the People's Republic of China to ensure that we are practicing a comprehensive and unified form of medical care. So, not ancient or outdated. Okay guys, we're almost to the end. The fifth misconception that I wanted to share about Chinese medicine is that Chinese medicine is not peer-reviewed and does not include peer-reviewed work. So let's talk a little bit about how Chinese medicine is actually peer-reviewed. The first thing I wanted to point out was that in 2015, a Chinese medical practitioner was actually awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for her work on isolating a component of a Chinese medical herb that is commonly used for anti-malarial treatment and is now the main constituent in the anti-malarial treatment and cure. So that was super huge because, as you know, malaria has definitely swept across many nations and kind of totally demolished them. And I think it's also important to note that that was not new to Chinese medicine. That was something that had been used for hundreds of years, but we just finally recognized it as true once we had the research to back it up. On top of that, I want you to definitely try out going on PubMed, some other sort of peer-reviewed research publications, and type in acupuncture and Parkinson's disease, or acupuncture and Alzheimer's, dementia, a lot of neurological conditions do have thousands of peer-reviewed research papers that are out there and being tested for their efficacy in the treatment and kind of delay of those neurological deficits that can occur. The next part of Chinese medicine that I wanted to point out is that, not everything is in English. It is a East Asian practice, and it is something that is much more commonly accepted and used in East Asia. Whereas here in America, we're just it's been here for a while, yes, but it hasn't really had the opportunity to spread as it should, because I think as a whole, a lot of marginalized communities haven't really gained the opportunity to share all of the great things that they can bring to the plate here in America. So hopefully I think that is changing. I think medicine is becoming more integrative. We see acupuncture and herbs being used commonly when patients undergo chemotherapy and radiation treatments, just because the effects can be helpful, very sedating, kind of helping with the nausea and the after effects of those treatments. So there's definitely a lot out there. I think there definitely could be more funding so that we had more peer-reviewed research here in America, but that's personally one of my goals in this field, is to help kind of bridge the gap between our Western biomedical form of thinking and this East Asian practice that has been long used and has been proven to have results. Okay guys, you made it to the end. The last misconception is pretty freaking huge, so listen up. It's that acupuncture can only be used for musculoskeletal problems only. I said that kind of weird, musculoskeletal. When you go to a PT office or a chiropractor or even an MD that says that they practice acupuncture, what they're actually practicing is known as dry needling. And I think the medical industry is now starting to recognize that that is not true acupuncture, but there's still kind of like this common misconception that people think that, oh, they've had acupuncture before because they had it on their back when they went to their doctor for back pain. And the truth is that dry needling is just really for that musculoskeletal issues. But when we look beyond that, acupuncture actually takes into account a full medical bodily system. So we use acupuncture to treat depression, anxiety. We also use it to treat heart problems, kidney problems, liver problems, you name it. There is acupuncture and herbs that are used for a whole variety of ailments. So I just wanted to make that clear that acupuncture is totally different. It relies on totally different philosophies. It relies on channels and networks that actually go down the hands, the body, the face. So there are over 300 acupuncture points that we regularly employ and use in the treatment of varieties of ailments. So that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for tuning in and watching my video of 2022. Let's make this a great year. Be sure to like, subscribe, comment, do all the things. I appreciate your time with me here, and I hope that you can use this knowledge to debunk some misconceptions if you hear them about Chinese medicine. So that's it for now. I will see you soon and have a wonderful day. Thanks.